So the map of global manufacturing, it's being radically redrawn right as we speak. And get this, an invisible metric is now deciding the physical flow of goods all over the world. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to decode a massive, tectonic shift that is completely disrupting global trade. You see, we're moving away from those rigid geographic rules that totally dominated the 20th century, and we're stepping right into an era where pollution itself is literally rewriting the economics of supply chains. It's wild.
Here is our itinerary for mapping out this new terrain. 1. The new global map. 2. Decoding the CBAM policy. 3. The carbon border shift. And 4. Manufacturing's new winners. We'll basically zoom in on the mechanics of carbon pricing and then zoom right back out to follow the money. Okay, let's dive right in by asking the core economic mystery at the heart of our source material today. Who wins when carbon gets a passport? I mean, for centuries, borders have been incredibly physical, right? Customs agents checked inventory, they inspected wooden crates, and they stamped paperwork for tangible goods. But think about what happens when the invisible exhaust from a factory halfway across the world suddenly needs its own documentation just across a border. It sounds almost absurd, right? Tracking thin air. Yet that is exactly the foundational reality reshaping global supply chains right now.
Section 1. The new global map. To answer our question, we really have to start by looking at the macro reality. The geographic rules of production that dominated the last 100 years, well, they are officially changing. For decades, global manufacturing was basically a race to the bottom when it came to operational costs. The old reality was brutally simple. Supply chains were optimized purely for cheap labor and lax environmental regulations. A company might dig up raw materials in one hemisphere, ship them across the globe to a factory just because the labor cost a few cents less per hour, and then ship the finished goods all the way back. And the math worked. Why? Because the carbon emitted during all that production and shipping was completely free. But the new CBAM reality flips that entirely on its head. Today, supply chains are being radically optimized for low carbon footprints to avoid severe border penalties. Look at it this way. If you save 20% on labor but get hit with a 40% carbon tariff at the border, you lose. A product's embedded carbon is now the ultimate deciding factor in global trade, heavily outweighing traditional labor arbitrage.
Which brings us to Section 2, decoding the CBAM policy. So what's the actual mechanism driving this massive geographic shift? Let's decode the specific policy that's rewriting the rules. Now, without taking any political sides on climate policy, we are going to look at the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or CBAM, purely for what it is. In practice, CBAM operates simply as an economic toll booth for carbon emissions at the border. It's a trade policy that places a strict, unavoidable financial price tag on the carbon emissions of carbon-intensive goods entering a market. For a long time, domestic producers in highly regulated markets complained they were being undercut by foreign competitors who just didn't have to pay for their pollution. Well, CBAM effectively levels that playing field. It ensures that imported goods are subject to the exact same carbon costs as goods produced domestically. It genuinely doesn't matter what the local politicians in the exporting country believe. If your goods cross this border, they pay the toll based purely on how they were manufactured. The mechanism of this policy breaks down into 3 highly sequential, completely unavoidable steps. Step 1. Track emissions. Manufacturers must now act like forensic accountants, but, for pollution. They have to trace and audit every single ounce of carbon embedded in their product's creation, all the way from raw material extraction right down to the factory floor. Step 2. Hit the border. When that product arrives at the importing market, customs officials aren't just looking at bills of lading or weighing shipping containers anymore. They are actually auditing those emission certificates. And finally, step 3, apply the carbon price. A fee is levied that precisely matches the carbon output. This entire process forces total transparency, assesses the emissions upon import, and taxes them accordingly. You literally cannot sneak a carbon cloud past customs anymore. Moving on to Section 3, the carbon border shift. We know the policy, but how does this actually translate into a tangible shift at the border? And more importantly, how does it hit the bottom line? Let's visualize the real-world application here, specifically looking at heavy, historically dirty industries like steel and cement. Imagine you're a legacy steel manufacturer using cheap, dirty coal to power your blast furnaces. You hit the border, and suddenly, bam, you face heavy, punishing tariffs. Your previous competitive edge, maybe gained from that cheap coal or cheap labor, is instantly wiped out before your product even reaches a single customer. Meanwhile, picture your competitor. They produce low-carbon steel using green energy or electric arc furnaces. They arrive at the exact same border and sail right through with zero border friction.
The exact same dynamic applies to cement. The high-carbon producer is slammed with high import costs, practically pricing them right out of the market, while the clean competitor enjoys totally unrestricted market access. The playing field hasn't just been leveled, it's been tilted entirely in favor of clean production. So, the ultimate takeaway here is this. The financial cost of pollution is now an unavoidable cost of global business. For decades, carbon emissions were basically seen as an environmental PR problem, right? Well, today, they are a hard CFO math problem. You can no longer offshore your carbon output to a country with looser rules and expect to sell into premium markets without paying the piper. Carbon carries a very real, very measurable financial weight that goes straight to the profit and loss statement.
All right, final section. Number 4, manufacturing's new winners. With the old rules effectively broken, a massive vacuum has opened up in global trade. Let's zoom back out to our global map and look at who the new winners are under the strict new rulebook. Because where there's disruption, there is incredible opportunity. This single number right here is perhaps the most powerful metric in global trade today. $0. This represents the border penalty applied to 100% clean, zero-emission manufacturing under CBAM. By achieving this, a producer isn't just generating good press. They are instantly granted a massive, potentially insurmountable competitive advantage. I mean, think about it. A $0 tariff means exponentially higher margins, infinitely faster customs clearance, and dominant market positioning over high-carbon rivals who are just bleeding cash at the border.
So, who actually gets to enjoy that $0 advantage? Well, the companies capturing the new manufacturing money aren't necessarily your traditional century-old industrial giants. Instead, we're seeing the rise of agile producers who share a very specific anatomy. First off, they're heavily invested in cutting-edge clean tech manufacturing. Second, they maintain highly transparent supply chains. They don't just guess, they know exactly where every single component originates. Third, and this is a vital distinction, they are powered by localized, low-carbon energy grids. You could build the most hyper-efficient, futuristic factory in the world, but if you plug it into a dirty, coal-fired local energy grid, you are still going to pay a massive border penalty. True winners ensure their power source is as clean as their assembly line. And finally, they are proactive in real-time carbon tracking. They treat their emissions data with the exact same rigor and auditing standards as their financial data. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to ask yourself a critical question. With the rules of global trade permanently shifted by carbon pricing and the era of hiding emissions officially over, where does your supply chain fall on manufacturing's new global map? Is your industry, or maybe the companies you actively invest in, positioned as a legacy loser clinging to the old map? Or are they a new clean winner, ready to absolutely dominate the new global reality? Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope this gave you a clear lens into the future of global trade.